Okay, hello, Peter Kuplowsky. Are you excited to introduce your program movies in the Midnight Madness category at TIFF this year?
I'm always excited. It's one of
Uh-huh.
my favorite times of the year. Midnight Madness, the Toronto International Film Festival, and we're back. We've been in person technically throughout the pandemic. We were in cars for some of the screenings, and where we'd only have at least 50 people in the audience for some of the screenings in 2020. But there were in-person screenings at the Toronto Film Festival. It was a bit bigger last year, but I did feel like those 2 years were more like Midnight Mass than Midnight Madness. Still a little solemn. I think there was still a lot of discomfort going to the movie theater. But while we're still not on the other side of this pandemic, and I'm certainly going to be masked up for these screenings, I do feel, I am excited that it is going to be a full house, that it is going to be a festival that feels like a traditional festival with a few new wrinkles, a few new permutations. We're in a different location this year. We're not at the Ryerson Theater. We're at the Royal Alex, so it's a bit like that year when Halloween went to the Elgin in Winter Garden. I don't know if you remember that from a few years ago. So I feel like our audience has rolled with one of these fancier venues, but at the same time, it's a 100-year-old building. It's probably haunted. I feel like that's perfect for midnight. So all this to say, I'm very excited about this year.
Okay, so okay, there's a couple of things I wanted to say. So I was there for one Midnight Madness screening last year. I did some, P&Is, but the public one was for the what was it? The theater of incoherence, or sorry, the cinema of incoherence thing. What was it?
Yeah, After Blue at the Lightbox.
After Blue, right?
Yeah.
And that was the Midnight Mass experience for me.
And I mean, part of that was the Lightbox too, because I just feel like I love the Lightbox. I'm not going to knock publicly the Lightbox. I think it's an incredible building, incredibly state-of-the-art building.
Yeah.
But its acoustics room was too good, so you can't hear the audience. So if the audience is reacting to something, for Midnight Madness, it's always so important for me that it's, a big part of the experience is being part of that audience as it reacts to the movie. And I think that's something that the filmmaker gets a lot out of. It's what the audience gets a lot out of. And I think the Lightbox, the acoustics were not the right vibe for Midnight Madness. But I did notice when I went to the Titan screening, which was the Princess of Wales, which was a much more cavernous space, the audience really was sort of a roaring audience. And so I feel like I feel like we are going to have full-on madness this year. It's not going to be Midnight Mass.
Well, yeah, I'm a fan of Titan. I got the poster right behind me. I don't know if you can see that. Great times.
That's awesome.
And I remember you told me you were upset that some people passed out, and I said you should wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
That is. I mean,
we'll see if people pass out this year. I don't have any French women directing films this year, so maybe we'll be okay. But I do have a very bloody Korean film. And if it's the sight of blood that makes people pass out, we may have to call the EMTs for Project Wolf Hunt.
Yeah, Project Wolf Hunt. Okay, let's get into Project Wolf Hunt. How intense is that one?
It's intense. I mean, it's like a gritty crime film. Right. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it's definitely one of those movies that starts in one genre and starts to like spin into other genres as it goes along. I pitch it in the note as kind of like Con Air on a boat mixed with like a Japanese survival horror game. It's also one of those movies that has so many characters. Like it really just stacks the cast with all these characters that you're actually kind of wondering, well, wait, who's our protagonist? Who's going to be the one that survives this thing? Because it's really a movie that keeps you on your toes. Also, who's going to be the main antagonist? That even is something that keeps you on your toes throughout the film, because there's a huge body count, lots of blood. Like people are just geyser of blood. But it's real comic book violence too. Like I think it's not I don't think it's super scary, but I think the movie's going for fun, gritty, wild, gory action.
Will people be blown away by Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al?
They're going to be blown away by how jacked Daniel Radcliffe got for this role. Like he's in amazing shape. But no, I mean, it's a really fun performance. I can't wait for people to experience the film. I'm very curious how people who don't know that much about Weird Al will take away from the movie, because it plays arguably fast and loose with the facts, and I think that's what makes it all the more entertaining. For any longtime Weird Al fans, I think they'll also be pleased with how the movie picks up some of the canonical pieces of Weird Al's history according to the Complete Al documentary from the early '90s that Weird Al made. But I'm just delighted to have it as opening night. Weird Al's a hero of mine. I think he personifies Midnight Madness in a certain respect for a type of underground artist that then ultimately achieved widespread success, but has sort of never let that make him stop being weird. And I just think I think how I bookend Midnight this year is I'm opening with Weird and I'm ending with Leonore Will Never Die, and they're both movies about the power of being true to yourself through art, and how important art can be, especially underground art or niche art, art that forms cult communities, and how those communities, I think, they can be so empowering and galvanizing and inspiring. And so that felt like something we needed. I've played some feel bad midnights in the past, and there are a couple this year that are definitely more intense, a little bit more nihilistic.
Like Violation.
Violation was definitely a feel bad midnight. I'm not against having those.
Yeah.
But I'm happy. I kind of felt like the world is such a dark place, and the midnight doesn't always have to be something that leaves you shell shocked. It can leave you, with your sides hurting from laughter, or just like, a glow on your face that you've just seen something totally strange and totally infectious. So very excited to have both those films.
Yeah. Okay. So I just read the write up of Leonard Will Never Die. It's coming from the Philippines, correct? And it sounds quite cerebral. So tell me a little bit more about that one.
I mean, I don't think it's that cerebral. It definitely is more measured in its pacing. It's a bit more, more art house in its pacing, and it's a big tribute to Filipino action cinema from the '80s. And even if you haven't watched those films, there's certain aesthetic details to them when the film starts to recreate those movies that I think will be familiar. If you've ever seen like a trailer package or watched old Roger Corman films that used to often appropriate footage from this Filipino action films. Godfrey Ho did that a lot as well. But it's something I saw at Sundance. It was the first film I invited. I saw it at Sundance, and it was far and away my favorite thing there. It really sent me into 2022 just falling in love with movies again and their power. And I love the cast of the movie. I think the movie's really creative. It gets really meta, and I think, and maybe that's where you allude to with the cerebral sense, because it does get super meta, and almost becomes a movie about its very own making at a certain point, which I thought was really cool. I just thought the movie was so eccentric, and I've used this adjective far many times this interview. It gets weird. And I think that's the theme of the year. I'm playing weird movies.
Okay, well, fair. It is Midnight Madness after all. I'll be a little disappointed otherwise. Yeah. So I love VHS, the first one.
Sure.
VHS 2, I like even more. Some people think I'm crazy for saying that. I don't really remember the third one. I thought it was kind of lousy. And then I didn't see the fourth one. So tell me how VHS 99 stacks in the series.
I mean, I'll say this. VHS 99, at the start of the year, I was not expecting that this is a film that was going to be in my lineup. I like the VHS films, but I often find that I like to, I don't want to stack a midnight lineup with sequels. And, I try to find films that I think are, could benefit from more exposure. And the VHS films are going to be fine. They're being made by Shudder now. And they're coming out, maybe even once a year at this point, because I know they got another one cooking. But I watched this one, and two things really struck me. One, it did away with the wraparound concept, something that I've always felt has held previous VHSs back a little bit in my mind, just in terms of pacing. because I always felt that like the problem with the VHS wraparounds in previous movies is that you would have like a fun short and then you would go back to the wraparound and nothing would really happen in the wraparound. It would just be the characters kind of walking around until they found another VHS and popped it in. And I always felt that kind of killed the pacing in some of the earlier ones, despite how great some of the shorts were. And here they kind of have gotten rid of that concept, and it's more the idea that there's this one tape that someone has taped over multiple times, and so each level of the tape is a different layer until you get to the sort of final layer of what's been taped on the tape. And I thought that was like a really creative, inspired new idea. The second thing that really, you know, impressed me about the film was I had seen a feature at South by this year called Deadstream by Joseph and Vanessa Winters. And it was a film that I went in, not really, again, expecting to love. The premise seemed a little abrasive. When it started, it was about a live streamer, and and the performance was almost too accurate to an obnoxious live streamer, because I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to hang out with this guy for 80 minutes. But I really got into it, and I really enjoyed it. And then when I heard that they had been attached the last minute, basically that film premiered, and the producers of VHS 99 saw it. We're like, we got to get them onto a VHS project. And they turned this around so quick. In fact, I think when I saw their segment, they had just finished shooting it days before. And so a lot of the effects weren't finished. But I got to tell you, this might be one of the best VHS segments I've ever seen. It's so much fun. It's an idea that I can't believe none of the VHS films have done yet. Like it's like, oh, this seems like an obvious premise for a VHS short. And so I'm just really that segment almost alone. I love all the other segments in the film. I think it's got a great variety. I like that all of them actually play with the VHS concept in, I think, more creative ways, or not creative is the wrong word, more elastic ways. Because I feel like, you know, we're now 4 or 5 films into the series, and so many of them are point of view, you know, films that are kind of in the tradition of Blair Witch. Where what I liked about this film is a lot of them got a little bit more creative with the concept of found footage. Found footage could be, I know, like, for instance, in the last VHS, 94, there was a news broadcast, basically. It was like an old tape of a news broadcast that only aired once. That's like a great, you know, creative way of kind of changing up the VHS formula a bit. In this one, there's, and like, they have two of the segments are like broadcasts from television. One's more of like an MTV demo tape. The other one is like a children's show. This is the one that Flying Lotus did. That is just amazing, and I'm a big fan of Philo. So I that was another reason why I was attracted to this. I thought, wow, it'd be so cool to have him.
Has he done more movies?
Not he's been doing some animation recently, and he's still scoring a lot of stuff. But
he's got a new one coming out with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Tessa Thompson. That sounds great.
Yeah, so that's all really exciting. So, you know, all these are kind of reasons why I kind of got interested in this one, and I like that it was also, and again, maybe this speaks to the fact that I kind of wanted a lineup this year that felt a little bit more fun after some of the feel bad midnights, you know, that I've delivered. And this one's fun. Like, this is just I just had a fun time with all of these. It's a bit sillier than maybe some of the previous ones, but I just had a blast with it. So I'm excited.
That's kind of what we need.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I remember watching the Book of Boba Fett, and Thundercat was in that, and then I hear Flying Lotus is in VHS 99. Maybe that's the key to everything. Get more rap producers in, you know, big franchise.
Well, I mean, we're in peak 90s nostalgia, so I mean, maybe that helped a little bit too. I think there's definitely some, from the haircuts to the to some of the ephemera that appears in it, and some of the references that they're making. It really feels like a full-on 90s fest, late 90s fest. Like, and I think that's what's kind of fun about these new VHSs, is that they are kind of becoming a bit time capsules. They're emulating a certain aesthetic with a bit more specificity, which I think is fun.
Sweet. So talk about Venus. Is that flavorful horror movie in this
Venus is
category?
When people have asked me, like, what is a, you know, straight down the middle classic Midnight Madness movie experience, I think Venus is going to deliver that. You've got alumni filmmaker like Yame Balagaro, who's been here with Rec 2 and Rec 4. You've got a premise that I think is just like a great spook 'em up premise. A girl on the run. She's hiding out in an apartment complex. This apartment complex is haunted by some kind of entity that is tying in with this astrological event that may be the end of the world. Like it's very much in a Euro horror tradition that I think has been a long-standing favorite genre at the Midnight Madness section. Tradition going all the way back to when we were playing Argento movies and Cemetery Man and stuff like that. Like it's very much, I think, in that tradition. And Alex de Iglesias, the producer, he's again a very story director in the Midnight Madness.
I saw his movie
so.
Action Mutante at Fantasia. That was sweet.
Yeah.
And Day of the Devil is hysterical. One of the funniest movies ever, I think.
Yeah, so the movie's going to have that kind of eccentricity
and
flavor to it, but it delivers. It delivers on the scares, and I think every year I do want to try and find a movie that has like great scares and has that kind of haunted house atmosphere, and I do feel like Venus is going to deliver that, and so I'm excited. I'm excited to have that on the lineup.
And so, does Ty West continue to crush things and dominate the world with?
I'm so intrigued to see what people think about this movie. It just premiered in Venice to some raves, but I think it might be divisive because it's not Mexican. It's not like a retread of X, and when I say that, it's not even doing the same genre, so to speak. It's not a slasher the way X was, like a 70s style slasher. This is a film that's much more indebted to filmmakers like Douglas Sirk, to movies like The Wizard of Oz. It's a campier affair in certain respects. It's more of a psychological drama. It's definitely got some feel bad moments. Like there's some brutality to what goes on in this film. But it's something that I would where X is a film that was getting compared to movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
This is something I would compare to Cindy Sherman's Office Killer or Rose Glass of Saint Maud, for that matter. And someone who I watched it with even compared it to something like Heavenly Creatures. Like it's very much a character drama. Beautiful cinematography. I love the spirit in which this film was made too, and I that they were making X and they were interested in exploring the story, and they were like, you know what, we got to stay here anyway because of quarantine. Let's just make another movie, and I think they've made something really special. And it's a for fans of X, I think it's a great exploration of one of that film's most interesting characters. And I really loved it, and I'm really glad to be able to premiere the film before it comes out in North America.
Sweet. So we were mentioning 70 slashers. Tell me about Sick.
Yeah. Sick. So Sick I'm excited to include in the section for a few reasons. The most of which, though, is that it's directed by John Hyams. It's one of my favorite directors working in the Western world.
Universal Soldier.
Regeneration, Day of Reckoning. He did a really terrific Bad News Bears style comedy called All Square as well.
Okay.
I really think he's one of the best directors in the West, particularly when it comes to action. I think he has a very canny sense of how to shoot action. I think his use of his composition, his framing, his shot selection, all of that is just really terrific. And I've wanted to, ever since I saw Day of Reckoning and ever since I got this gig, I've been interested in having him be in the Midnight Madness canon. And then I saw, I think it was like in late 2020, I was refreshing IMDb, his page, and I saw Sick appear, and then I clicked on it and I saw that Kevin Williamson was involved, and I went, what? Okay, hang on a second. We got the guy who wrote Scream working with John Hyams, and they're making a slasher movie together. That is exciting. And so I was pestering John, can I see it? Can I see it? And then eventually I could. And I was really, really excited by it because it's a real lean and mean slasher. I don't think it's something that is reinventing the wheel. It's not necessarily something that's super subversive either, but it's delivering what I think is just a suspenseful, classy, straight ahead slasher, which is really great filmmaking behind it, a fun script, great lead performances, characters you want to root for in the sense that you want them to survive the situation. And I think the way it incorporates COVID is pretty cheeky. I think some people will be like, okay, maybe it's too soon to be making COVID movies with this kind of flippancy that the film sometimes has. But at the same time, I think it does hit a number of hot button issues with regards to how we as a society are moving forward through this continuing pandemic. I'm really excited for that one. I think the suspense moments are just great. There's just a lot of really great set pieces with regards to just winding up the suspense and then paying it off. And then Hyams is just he's so great with just choreographing how a body reacts to violence and how a character, even the killer, will run out of breath. It reminded me of those moments in the first Scream, which I think are kind of underrated details. Those killers slip, they fall, they trip over things. They're not perfect Michael Myers vehicles of vengeance. And I think that's what's great about this movie here. There are humans on both sides of the story. And I actually think there will be some audiences that may even be at times be on the killer's side once you begin to understand what the killer's motivations are. So I find it a fascinating genre exercise, and I don't use that as a pejorative at all. I think this is a really wicked horror filmmaking.
It's always cool when the bad guy has like a three-dimensional philosophy.
Yeah, and I think the villains, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think there could be a sympathetic read on where the villain is coming from. Maybe they've taken things to extremes, but that's what a slasher movie is.
Absolutely. All right, we got 3 more movies to get through. So I enjoyed Rare Exports, watching that, way back when. So and that director is back with Sisu. So is it the same level of quality? What's it like?
Sisu, man, I think this is going to be one of the most raucous midnights in terms of, because I don't know if people actually appreciate what we're going to get, and maybe that's because Rare Exports was this like kind of creepy Amblin-esque Santa Claus horror movie. And then he made Big Game, which was a full-on like young adult film. It did play Midnight Madness, and I'm kind of, some people thought it was too much of a kids film for Midnight Madness. I'm a little partial to blame. I was Colin Geddes, who did Midnight Madness at that year, his assistant at the time, and I was pushing hard for Big Game because I was like, I just thought it was so wild and almost like a full-blown parody of American action cinema. Sisu, it's Finnish Rambo. You've got a old Finnish guy who has found some gold in the Laplands, and he runs afoul of some Nazis at the end of World War II. So the Nazis are just trying to get home after the Russians have beat them back, and they think this is just some old guy they can push around and steal his gold. And unfortunately, this Finnish guy is like a one-man army, and it's almost like a slasher film where you're definitely rooting for the slasher, as this Finnish guy is just tearing through Nazis as he's trying to get his gold back. And the cinematography is outstanding. The effects are great. It's super gory. It's action packed. It's almost like a Mad Max Fury Road in the sense that it's basically one long mission. As this convoy is just being taken out car after car, as this guy just won't die because he wants his gold back. And I think it's gonna be a blast. And we're working on having something really special as the audience comes into that screening. So it's definitely one that I think you're going to want to be there for the midnight premiere, because I think we're going to do something on stage that is pretty cool, and I hope it works out.
All right, is it going to be cooler than when you dance with Takashi Miike?
Yeah, it's going to be something like that. It'll be some performance art on stage. It'll be good.
Beautiful. Okay, so is The Blackening the funniest movie in the category this year?
It might be. It's up there. It's definitely up there. I think this is going to be a huge crowd pleaser at the festival. It's a really terrific script from Dwayne Perkins and Tracy Oliver, based on a really funny sketch that you can find on Facebook and YouTube if you look for it, the 3P Comedy did. It's a send-up of slasher films. I'm really happy that I'm pairing The Blackening and Sick. I feel like there might be some people that watch The Blackening, they'll have a good time, but they'll go, well, I can't, I wanted to see a home invasion slasher movie that's maybe a little scarier and has some of the some of the blood and guts that I'm looking for. Well, that's sick. You'll see that the next night. But I like that we've got this one film on Saturday that I think is just going to be a big send up of the genre. The basic premise is that in slasher films and genre films, often the black character or the person of color is kind of treated as an expendable character. They're usually underwritten, underdeveloped,
especially like the 80s, 90s, I would say.
Oh yeah, certainly in the 80s and 90s. It's kind of like a trope, and it's totally gotten better, but I don't want to spoil.
So aware of it.
I don't want to. If I give examples, I realize I'm spoiling the movie because I'm telling people if they,
let's not do
that.
But
what's great about this film is that so to continue the premise is because of that trope. This movie's joke is, well, what if we filled the movie with an all-black cast? So who, that now, how are the rules? How does that change the rules, so-called rules of the genre of a genre film? But more so than that, it actually is a movie in which these friends that are all hanging out and they're all black are being targeted by a killer who's forcing them to actually interrogate their own blackness with each other, and based on how well they do, it determines their survival. And so I think there's a lot of really clever conversations about race. I think the cast is outstanding. They're so funny. I mean, it's so often with horror films when you watch them that you just don't believe the group of friends. You just don't believe any of these people could be friends. And I just thought there was such great natural chemistry with everybody in this cast. I really enjoyed the group that they put together. And I was rooting for everybody to make it through the night. And I think it's just going to be a real good time.
Fun.
But it might not be the funniest.
Oh,
because I think
People's Joker.
Yeah, I mean, how can the People's Joker not be the funniest? Though incidentally, I mean, Vera Drew, the writer and star of the People's Joker, has self-described her character as an aspiring unfunny clown. Because the movie is in a sense about anti-comedy. So maybe The Blackening is objectively the funniest film. But I loved The People's Joker. People's Joker is a film that I'm so excited to be showing. It is an unauthorized Joker movie, as in Joker from Batman and Robin.
Right.
In DC Comics, made by Vera Drew, who is a comedy force to be reckoned with. Though you may not know her name, you might know her work. She has worked with Sacha Baron Cohen. She won an Emmy for This Is America. Or Who Is America?
I love that show.
Yeah, that he did. Vera also edited Tim Heidecker's On Cinema series, directed some episodes. She's worked all over Adult Swim and is such a talent. This is her directorial debut, and it began as sort of a joke. Like, she was initially just going to do a remix for her friends of Todd Phillips' Joker, based on her own experiences in the New York comedy scene, her own experiences working as a trans comedian. And what ended up happening is she started to write a script with her friend Brie LaRose and realized this was actually like a script she wanted to make, and not just use Todd Phillips' film, but like build it from the ground up. And over the course of the pandemic, she reached out to friends across the internet, artists who all got involved and helped her make sets and backdrops and costumes and portrayed characters and created effect sequences for her. And they've made this, multimedia, mixed media extravaganza that is a big tribute to the state of comedy today, a big rumination on Vera's own autobiographic experience, and also a hell of a Batman movie. Like I think it's a great Batman movie. So I'm really excited. I think that's going to be a really fun night. It's one of those movies that even I wouldn't expect to see a movie like that at a festival like TIFF. And I think that is a goal of mine every year with the Midnight Madness section, is I'd like to find those films. Like, this is something that it was really important to me in 2019 when I had Crazy World and the Walk Hollywood film at the section. I really want to create spaces for underground art, films that I feel like are truly like underground cinema, because if we're not showing that work on a world stage as large as TIFF, then what are we doing? And anyone who might say, well, what about this filmmaker? I mean, yeah, I mean, I should be finding more space, and I hope to always improve every year and find more space, and I do think that I have to acclimate the audience though too. I think you can't just start showing the TIFF audience a certain kind of movie. I think you over time just have to expose them to stranger stuff that maybe is a little bit more low budget, stuff that maybe costs less than the ticket you just paid to see the movie.
The Crazy World is that.
Yeah, crazy. And so Crazy World was like me trying to do that, and People's Joker had a lot more resources, but I still think it's a film that definitely is coloring outside of the lines, and that's precisely why I had to have it at midnight, and I'm so excited to host that premiere.
All right, sweet. Well, that's it. That's all 10 movies. We covered it all. Peter, thanks for your time. My final question for you is: when you do those like Q&As at the end, do you just get tired? Do you ever get tired doing Midnight Madness?
No, not really. I mean, the audience is always so alert. That's the thing is, midnight Q&As I actually find are pretty easy, because after 2 or 3 questions, people in the audience have, they've got questions. I can suddenly turn it over to the audience, and I make no pretenses. I'm gonna shut people down if they just want to dish out a comment or waste people's time with like a what happened at the end of the movie. But I usually don't have to do that, because oftentimes people have pretty great questions, and the thing is, I'll say this: I have a very privileged position as a programmer. Most programmers, when the movie premieres, they're unable to watch it with the audience and the filmmaker. They got to go off and attend to another event, and or introduce another movie. And I have to do that for some of the movies that I'm introducing throughout the festival during the day. Some of the films that I've programmed in other sections. But at midnight, there's nothing else going on. I'm not going to another party. I'm sitting there with the audience. I'm going to watch the movie with the audience, and I get to vicariously live through the experience of the filmmaker experiencing a great audience reaction. And that is a high that keeps me up way past my bedtime. So I don't get tired. I love it, and it's a privilege, and I'm so gosh darn grateful to have the ability to do this and work with these incredible filmmakers at this amazing festival platform.
That's beautiful. You're very grateful, I can tell.
Thanks. I hope so. I'm always knocking on wood that this is happening. And I'm grateful for the audience too. I'm grateful that people come out. I know that it's an investment to see all these movies, and every time someone comes up to me and say they saw all 10, that means so much, and I just hope they don't regret it and they had a good time. And usually they seem to have had a good time, so I'm happy for that.
All right, well, thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you, Mike.